Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Maivi and I am an environmental climate change expert, and we're doing here a series in which we are reviewing the different books nominated for the Climate Fiction Prize. And we're not just reviewing them from a literary perspective, but also from a climate change perspective. So today I wanted to discuss with you the fourth book that I read from the shortlisted books, which is And So I Roar. This book, written by Abi Dare, is actually the continuation of this other book called The Girl with the Louding Voice. And the events that take place in this book are literally immediately after, the minute after this story this story begins. So I don't think I can really talk about this book without talking about this one as well. So we have kind of like a 2 per 1 in this opportunity. Both of these books talk about a story that takes place in Nigeria, and we have two main protagonists in this book, which are Adunni, which is a 15-year-old girl, and she comes from a remote rural village in Nigeria. And then we also have Tia, who is a woman who comes from a much more privileged background, also Nigerian, and she lives in Lagos, in Nigeria's capital. So the first book, The Girl with the Louding Voice, actually focuses on Adunni's life. We see a whole year from the time she's 14 years old, and we see the things that happen to her, and we also learn about her life and her past. Adunni is a 14-year-old girl when this book starts, and she has this burning desire to go to school. She is passionate about education, and she dreams of one day becoming a teacher. The beginning of this book basically talks about how she was actually going to school for the first few years of school education until her mother died. Her mother was the main provider of the household, and that left her only with her father, who was a bit of a drunk and didn't really work, and her two brothers. So when her mom died, she kind of became responsible for the household, for the house chores, and her father didn't really have money to send her to school, so she stopped going to school. But she always dreamed about going back and getting her education. That's until the moment she turns 14, when her father thinks that she's old enough and it's time to marry her off. We learn about this tradition of teenage girls being married off to older men through kind of a negotiation, a sort of arrangement. In the case of Adunni, her husband was going to pay for her father's rent so they could keep living in the house. Adunni is married off to this man that has already two wives. But Adunni is not your typical quiet, submissive girl. She is a girl with a fire inside. She has a purpose in life. She's going to fight for her dream. So that's basically going to trigger a succession of horrible things that happen to her while she's fighting for her dreams, but the world wants to keep her down and to keep her in her role as a woman. And we also learn in this book the way in which Adunni meets Tia. And without giving any spoilers, let's just say that they become really good friends. And Tia is a person that is in a position in which she could potentially help Adunni achieve her dream. So in the second book, And So I Roar, basically this book starts with a very dramatic scene in which Adunni's past comes back to haunt her. And because of this, Adunni and Tia, they need to go back to Adunni's village, which is called Ikati. And the purpose of their travel is somehow to undergo something that is called the sacrifice. And the sacrifice is some sort of ceremony in which um, teenage girls, um, they are publicly punished to pay for some bad things that they have done. And this public punishment is some sort of way to appease the spirits. So this ceremony, this sacrifice, is something that happens, that takes place whenever the village is going through a bad period. And what is happening at the moment is that the village is undergoing a horrible drought, very severe drought, while other villages, other neighboring villages that are located on the other side of the mountain are suffering from flooding. And this is how we start to see that this novel becomes very relevant for climate change. The character of Tia, coincidentally, she works in the field of environment and climate change, pretty much like myself. And when she arrives to the area, in the village of Ikati, she's able to see the way in which the forest has been disseminated. It's been pretty much destroyed by illegal logging. And because of her knowledge, her scientific knowledge, immediately she's able to understand exactly what's going on in the village. So the thing with forests is that they work as sponges. So they trap the water and they regulate water flow. So thanks to forest, we can avoid water runoff. The forests help also feed aquifers, and they also help regulate water streams, so preventing the water to grow too fast or shrink too fast in a river or in any type of water stream. When you remove the forest, you are promoting water runoff. And that is exactly what is happening in Ikati. The water is running off very quickly. The aquifer is becoming empty, and that is also affecting the fertility of soil. So Ikati is undergoing this horrible crisis because of illegal logging. And it is very, very explicit in this novel that the logging taking place there is to send wood to international markets. So it's your typical first world coming in to take the resources of third world countries in the global south, which is what happens all across Africa, all across South America, all across Southeast Asia, etc., etc. And in Ikati, the villagers are kind of seeing this. They're seeing the forest disappearing around them, but they're not so concerned with it, or they don't seem so concerned with it, and they definitely do not associate the loss of the forest with the crisis that they're undergoing, and instead they blame the girls. So this entire second book takes place within 24 hours as the village is preparing for the sacrifice that is going to take place at midnight. And in this book, we learn about the lives and the stories of the other girls that are also taking part of this ceremony. That's why it is so important to read The Girl with the Louding Voice first, because in this book, it doesn't go so much in depth, on the life of Adunni. So I'm not sure if this can actually be a standalone book. I think it technically could be, but in this book, you're not going to learn about the story of Adunni and also some of her friends and how, what are the bonds that she have with some of the other characters in this book. In this story, we learn about the lives of those girls. And what we learn is that Adunni's story is not this uniquely tragic story of this very unlucky girl, but it's very much the norm for girls like her in her age in those circumstances. And the things that happen to these girls are different. They have different stories than Adunni's, but they're just different versions of tragic. And most importantly, we also learned about the far reaching and intricate consequences that climate change has in places like this, vulnerable places like this, in which economic, social, and cultural struggles exacerbate in the face of climate change. Regarding my reading experience, I think both of these books are fantastic. I thoroughly enjoyed them both. I loved The Girl with the Louded Voice, and I love to continue that story and to know more about these two amazing characters. And let me tell you, although this book has a proper ending, there are a few loose ends that really they kind of allude to potentially a third book coming up, and I'm really looking forward to it because there are some things that I need to know more about and explore. This book particularly addresses the topic of motherhood in a way that is so extraordinary. As a child-free woman myself, I think I just it's very rare that I adore the way in which the topic of motherhood and womanhood is discussed. I think this book is fantastic, extraordinary in the way that it discusses that very sensitive topic from so many different perspectives. The characters in this book are lovable. Adunni is a character that you cannot help falling in love with. She's amazing. You want to root for her. You want to see her win at life. You want to see her fighting and fulfilling her dreams. I absolutely love the character of Adunni. The character of Tia, I didn't only love, I related to her so much in so many levels, particularly this urge to try and make the world a better place, the frustration that it is to see the things that happen around you, and that, determination to do something about it, while at the same time you don't even know what to do, where to start, but you just show up, you just go and do your best and help for the best. I absolutely love as well the character of Tia. And the last thing I want to say about the reading experience is Adunni's English is not your typical English. I would say, obviously, English is my second language, and for me, it sounded like she would think in her own language and then translate to English word by word. That's my suspicion, because I think that's what I would sound like as well if I would think in Spanish and translate to Spanish word by word, which is not how you do translations, by the way, if you don't really know much about it. But it is a very difficult language to get into and to understand. So the way that I found that worked best for me to follow this book was to read it, actually both of these books. I read them while listening to the audiobook. The audiobook that I heard is narrated by Adjua Ando, and oh my god, that woman, oh my god, she's an amazing actress, first and foremost, absolutely amazing actress, but the way that she gives voice to Adunni, she has so much emotion, and it was much easier for me to understand what Adunni was saying while I was listening to it, the way that it's supposed to sound, and the way that this woman makes the different voices for the different characters, and it's just so much emotion. There's just so much emotion in her acting of the scenes of this book. So I highly recommend the audiobook. Either if you plan to read it, listen as well, or if you just want to listen without reading, that's good as well. Whatever works better for you. But I highly recommend that audiobook. So that is all from me. Thank you very much for joining me, for spending a little bit of time with me. I hope you enjoyed this review. If you read the book yourself, please let me know in the comments down below if you agree with me, if you loved it and enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.